Hey, and welcome back to Rennch, DIY projects for your air-cooled Porsche. We're into day 4 of the classic retrofit air conditioning install. Today we're going to work on the ducting and the routing of the AC hoses to permanently install both, and with any luck, get into the wiring. Let's do this. So on the last episode, I was able to get the fan and condenser permanently mounted and run the AC lines to the front of the car. I was also able to get the filter dryer installed in the smuggler's box and the blower itself mounted where it needed to go. Problem was, I couldn't get any power to the blower. Turns out it was this guy, which is a relay that was obviously 50 years old, and it didn't work. I was able to swap out the relays, and all of a sudden I had power to the blower again. Woohoo! There it is. It's blowing strong, baby. Blowing strong. Today's plan is to get all the ducting and all of the AC lines bolted up and moved around where they need to be. And that may be a little challenging. So I have the center vent that I have to route, and I have to figure out how I'm going to permanently mount it. One of the features of this blower is that it will take the hot air from the cabin and replace it with cool air from the air conditioner. And those heat exchanger ducts are where I'm going to do it. So I have to remove those hoses because I'm going to replace them with shorter versions that will suck the hot air out of the cabin, process it in the system, and then send it back as conditioned, cool air. So to do that, I'm gonna have to actually pull the carpeting from each footwell, which I'm not super excited about because I just installed that all myself, and I'm gonna have to pull a bit of it out. So hopefully no big deal. I can pull it out, re-glue it, and all will be well in the world. But let's get into this. I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do today. Okay, here we are in the frunk, and you can see what I have so far. I've got pretty much all the components in place. This isn't bolted in yet or wired or anything, but I do have the blower roughly mounted in here, so it is where it's gonna be. And I've got these blender valves that are basically empty. These two on top run to the defrost that's sort of up into your windshield. These go down into eventually the heat exchangers, which I don't have. And then these are empty right now. So on the blower, the empty ones here are going to correspond with these switched valves. So they're gonna go here. One of these, probably this one, is going to go to my center vent that I have just sort of loosely installed here. And then the other one's gonna get blocked off. On an early car like this, I don't have that many spots where I can send the cold air. The next plan, which is gonna be a bit of a pain, is I have to disconnect this hose and run a short hose just right into the cabin. And that's going to suck the hot air out of the cabin. And that will eventually go around this blender valve and into this rear duct on the blower. I will then cap off these two small ducts because I don't need them for my car. If you have a later G-bodied car, you will use all of the ports. And certainly if you can come up with creative ways to use some of these blower ports to get more air into your cabin, that's even better. Next, regarding the AC lines, these are just basically hanging out. And I need to figure out a way to route them eventually to this side of the blower, which if you see that, you see those two little ports there? So both lines ultimately need to get there. I'm not sure if they're gonna get there through this area here where I've removed the cover over the steering rack. My plan is to put this back in some way, so if I have to notch it to get it in, I would actually like it to be in, because I just think it looks a little better. But what I just discovered is I've got these two holes here that I think, yeah, these things go right up into the smuggler's box. And I'll bet you anything, I can run these hoses right through there. And so if I can do that, that is going to make my life a lot easier, because then I can just basically route the exit from this dryer right up through one of these hoses and then right over, or even behind. I haven't decided yet, but figuring out where we're gonna route this thing is going to be part of the challenge of the day, but hopefully not that big of a challenge. And then we're ducted and plumbed. Let me show you the inside of the car. And what I've just discovered is going to be a challenge for the day. So inside the cabin, this is gonna be no problem. Me pulling the carpet back and getting access to that hose that's under the carpet is gonna be no big deal. This, on the other hand, is going to be a huge deal because I'm gonna have to remove this pedal, and that is a two-person job that requires me to pull my front wheel, jack the car up, and get somebody to hold the nuts on the other side so that I can then pull this carpet off. Because I'm gonna need the hose on the underside to be fully exposed and essentially sucking the hot air out of the cabin. My other challenge of the day is, here's the center vent, which you can get from an F-150. This is a Ford piece, but it fits perfectly into the hole where your clock used to be. And that's awesome. The problem is I can't get mine to fully seat. There's a little bit of, I don't know, a 1/4 inch of space here. You can see that. And I need to figure out how to get this thing mounted in a way that is appealing and looks good and is nice and tight. So that's another challenge of the day. And my inclination is that I'm gonna have to tackle these tubes first. So I'm gonna start at the easier one first, but I'm gonna tell you that this is a painful thing to do for me right now. This is such a nice, clean, tight install. Oh. So I'm gonna have to unbolt this. So as I'd hoped, this hose just clamps at the bottom here, and I should be able to unclamp it, undo it, and then wriggle it out. Voila. So here's the question. Since I don't need to go all the way down to the bottom, I wonder if I can get this one out just by tearing it and just getting to the spot that I want. I should be able to cut it inside the cabin and not have to disconnect everything. So let me break out a razor and see how much I can cut. And then I should be able to just disconnect it from the top here, and all should be well in the world. So that was successful, and it just saved me an enormous amount of time, because now all I have to do is just disconnect this thing and run a hose from here right into this hole, then I'm good. All right, boom. That just saved me a lot of time. All right, let's make this ducting work. It is quite tight right now. Okay, that's there. All right, it's there. Cool. So, since I'm only really using 3 of the outlet ports on the blower, I have this extra port hanging out that I need to plug. I don't have any plugs handy, and I've just duct taped the smaller one for now, just because I want to test it out. But that's where this can of Rust-Oleum comes in handy. Specifically, this part of the can, which happens to fit perfectly over this cap. So I'm going to trim this thing down by about half. I'm going to cut half of it off this way, and then cut a few slots in the remainder so that I can clamp it down. So let's give that a go. Wah, wah, wah. Okay, in the most rudimentary way, I am ducted. We've got the upper rear vents grabbing the hot air from the cabin. That's going through the floor. I'm gonna figure out something to duct this up here and close that gap. We have the blender valves connected to the first blower port on the blower. We have the center vent stretched too big, but it is connected to the upper blower on this side. We are capped off of the small blower in the middle, can't see it. And then on the other side, we've got the air coming from the cabin in the back, and that's dropping right down here. And then we just have the blender valve connected to the bottom blower. So this will blow air to the feet. These will blow air up into the vent up here. And then this guy will go into the center. So one thing I haven't even touched yet is all of the cabling, which I think is going to be next. But let's give it a go. Let's give it a test. Okay, moment of truth. Look at that. That is cranking air right through there. I've got nothing here and here yet. And, oh yeah, it's cranking on the bottom too. All right. I feel pretty good about that. Yeah, even without that, even just having the blower on it feels pretty good, to be honest. But if this is going to be cold air, it's going to be awesome. Beautiful. But wouldn't you know it, I just switched this. And now I've got defrost. Sweet. So I just switched the two controls on the blower control here, and I have air coming out of the floor, I've got air coming out of the vent, and I've got air coming out of the dashboard vents. So winner, winner. Let's route some AC lines now. So my plan is, I want to get everything basically functional first, make sure the AC lines are installed, make sure all the vents are good to go, and then really work on the wiring. And then I'm going to go back and work on prettying everything up. So I know I need a trim ring for this vent. I know I need to solve it a little better than it's solved right now. I may need to put a longer hose on there since I put something that was a little bit too short, because I would like it to be able to turn inside the vent, because right now it's just pretty much locked wherever it is. I got to put all the carpeting back and everything, but so far we're good. Let's do it. So I just messed up. All of the hose ends are clearly marked. They have A and B on them. And for some reason, I assumed that the A would be the top port and B would be the bottom port, and I was wrong. So I just put A where B is supposed to go, and B is on the bottom where I would have A. So I have to swap these. All right, so let me show you guys how I routed my hoses. The bigger hose, which is the 10 millimeter, comes up through the bottom of the smuggler's box, and it mounts to the top port of the compressor. And that is going to be the top port marked B, so that's up top. Second, in the blower part marked A, I've got the hose mounted down there, and then it hangs a right, and both of them pop up through this hole that's right under the box. It's kind of a big port here. I'm not sure what it was for originally, but I have plenty of space to run all of the hoses and all the electrical and still be able to shut my smuggler's box, which is part of my goal. I also want to be able to replace this cover for the steering rack, so I may need to carve it up a bit to make that work. What's left now are the two fill valves. These are the charge ports. These two guys. And then this end, which I think they call it the expansion valve. This will screw in using these M5 screws. These are 4 millimeter onto the back of, or the side of the blower. So this thing mounts in the side of the blower this way, and then you mount these two guys, small one and bigger one, on the side to connect these hoses. So they go here. This whole unit basically goes here and bolts to the side. Okay, so that's going to sort of hang out there. It's these I need to figure out where I'm going to put. So somewhere in this line, I've got to put both of these charge ports. I think what I'm going to do is cut the hose right around here in both spots. Probably put both charging ports together, maybe zip tie them together. Then work on my loop to the end. And then that's it. We are fully plumbed for AC and ready for well, essentially ready for wiring. That's going to be the next major task, is starting to wire this thing up. So one of the last pieces of fabrication I have to do on this project is figure out how to get the air that flows into the cabin of the car to move forward. In the kit, they give you some hose, and the idea behind the hose is once you've taken this piece off from under the dash, you create what's essentially a snorkel out of this. And you bend this thing 90 degrees, kind of make a D shape to it, and then tuck it in underneath so that the air redirects forward. I didn't love that idea. I was ready to do something maybe a little more permanent and a little more elegant. What I thought would happen is if I was on like a spirited drive, I would probably knee this thing or kick this thing because it's right above where your knees are. There is a lot of space. You don't really see it, and it is something they suggest in the kit. So you can definitely run that. I was looking for something a little different. So I went to the hardware store and I walked around for a while and just kind of, I had this shape in my head. It dawned on me that I could take something that was kind of a half moon and cut it, almost like an oval shape, and cut it, and I would have the right profile that I was looking for. So I'm kind of walking around. I stopped at the electrical section, and this is what I found. So you know those lights? Put a light bulb in, it's got a plastic part on the bottom, you hook these things, you hang them up. Well, I did a little modification. I bought two of these, they were about $5 each. When you look at the opening we have in the car, and you look at this bad boy, check it out. It's literally perfect. What I've got to do is figure out how to fabricate it. I'll show you in a second how it goes in the car. It's crazy. You literally have to pinch it a little bit together, and it will mount right between the mounting screws for the blend valve. So let me show you really quick what it looks like under the car. So this is what it looks like mounted underneath in the car. When I tell you it's perfect, I mean it is perfect. I'm going to throw a little rubber trim in there, clean up the front edge, and knowing me, I'll probably throw a coat of black paint on it just so it disappears under there. So these are the completed snorkels for under the dashboard. They turned out so good. I put some foam tape on the inside to cover the holes. Then I gave it another quick spray so that the backside of the foam tape sort of disappeared into the side. And now it makes one nice cohesive form. I think they came out great. I'm really excited about it. All right, all in a day's work. We are ducted and plumbed. All of the AC wiring is in. I haven't put the clamps on yet, but everything's there. I just gotta clamp these. I did clamp these to the body so they remain stable so people can use the charging ports right here. I have to solve this area here in terms of getting the cover back on, but otherwise, and actually I would like to run the power wire. If it could loop underneath, that would be great, and just come up. And then just run the cabling for the valves, and we're set. So there's that. And then if I pop the smuggler's box, that's all there, and that's all there. Looking beauteous. All right, until tomorrow. Super successful day today. Here's what we did. We finished plumbing all the AC lines and ran them where they're supposed to go. We got all the ducting where it's supposed to go, cut it, installed it, got the center vent installed, and innovated our way to a couple of very cool snorkels under the dashboard. We also tested the blower to make sure it works, and we are A-OK. So all that's left is wiring. Now, wiring is a bit of the bane of my existence because I don't know a lot about wiring, but the instructions are really good. Once you run power and run ground, there's only a few other wires to run, and then you are finished. So on the next session, we're gonna wrap this install up. I've got a few more things to do, like running cables to the blend valves and making sure they work appropriately, and then adjust the wiring. So on that note, would love if you'd hit that subscribe button, and hey, throw me a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. See you next time.